Hi class. All right, we are going to do a final review. I'm still kind of learning how to get through the PowerPoints coming into my video. So with the fatty acids and the essential fatty acids being converted into the eicosanoids, we have to remember that we're looking at the alpha-linolenic. That's your 18 carbon essential fatty acid. That gets elongated and desaturated into EPA. The comparison is going to be your linoleic, which is your N6, which is going to be elongated and desaturated into your arachidonic. Your arachidonic acid is your pro-inflammatory N6, which gets uploaded onto your plasma membranes, whereas if you eat a competitive amount of alpha-linolenic and supplement with EPA. The EPA as the N3, the omega-3, the anti-inflammatory essential fatty acid, it actually has a higher affinity for that plasma membrane uptake. So we really want to have a low ratio of N6 to N3. And we have to remember that the essential fatty acids, which are essential, meaning we have to ingest them, are the N3, alpha-linolenic, lenic, that's how I remember it, and your linoleic, which is your N6, okay? So what ends up happening in the chemistry is on the plasma membrane, it can also happen on the outside of your lipoproteins. You learn that in a later class with me, but assuming I get hired, the eicosanoids are going to be what happens when a stimulus activates cleaving of the molecule and then chemistry happens on it. So whether your plasma membrane or your lipoprotein phospholipid layer has an N3 or an N6 on the position 2, which is where the PUFA goes, phospholipase A2 is going to cleave it, right? Whether it's an EPA N3 or an AA, arachidonic acid N6, once a stimulus comes in, the phospholipase A2 cleaves it off the position 2. Then your COX and your LOX act on it. So if COX acts on it, then you're going to have your prostaglandins and thromboxanes. And if LOX acts on it, then you're going to get your leukotrienes. And whether your series is going to be actually be an N2 or N6 if it's pro-inflammatory, and it's also going to be an N1. Your anti-inflammatory is going to be your series 1 and 3. Now, if you remember, your DGLA is a omega-6, and that is not a pro-inflammatory like an arachidonic. Your DGLA, which is the omega-6, will also go through a series 1. Okay. We also need to remember that the cardioprotective effects of fish oil come from our eicosanoids. That is how it happens, right? So the things that we need to remember is sugar and the pro-inflammatory grains cause the conversion of the DGLA into the pro-inflammatory arachidonic acid. Hyperinsulin, hyperglycemia, and then your crappy foods, okay, like too much omega-6 and too much hyperglycemia. I think all carbs are bad, besides the starchy ones that come from produce and a little bit of fiber. That's you don't want your DGLA being overstimulated, upregulated, converting your omega-6s into the arachidonic. Your DGLA is very important, and that's the one that goes through and remains in the anti-inflammatory state through a series 1. Your series 3 of your eicosanoids, okay, that's your 3s and your 5s. That's what alpha-linolenic, your fish oil, and your flax. But you have to remember, if your flax is dependent on still being converted, the conversion into EPA is very difficult. So I do recommend supplementing with a fish oil. A fish oil should have your EPA and DHA already in it. Okay, that's going to help your body have a higher ratio of the anti-inflammatory omega-3s, because that does have a higher affinity for the plasma membrane. If you're going to eat if you're going to have I don't know, fried foods is the one I think of. If you're going to eat a fried food, or if you're going to have a bag of chips, if you're going to have chips and salsa, those are all omega-6. The best thing to do is just supplement with an extra fish oil. If you take the fish oil supplement after your high omega-6 meal, you still give the body the competition because omega-3 has a higher affinity. However, if you have a state of dietary intake where you're constantly just eating grains and sugar, and you're stimulating too much arachidonic, and then your ratio goes way high in these, in the N6 to N3, they say that the average American diet, their ratio is in 15 to 20 range to 1. And that's a pro-inflammatory state, and that's a cardiovascular risk, okay? So be sure you know your series. Where is it? I just had it. Be sure you understand that the pro-inflammatory series, the 1s, 3s, and 5s, and then your, anti-inflammatory is 1, 3, and 5. Your pro-inflammatory is your 2s and 4s, and that your anti-inflammatory omega-6 is your series 1, okay? So you can also take natural agents, which are modulators of the eicosanoid pathway. And if you supplement, just like I do every day, with ginger, turmeric, boswellia, quercetin, a lot of the flavonoids, those are going to down-regulate how much the COX and LOX enzymes act in the pro-inflammatory pathways. They're going to down-regulate and quiet the response of the PLA2s. Okay, so nuclear factor kappa B is a pro-inflammatory nuclear factor, or nuclear transcription factor. It upregulates the pro-inflammatory genes. The ones I really want you to focus on, the cytokines. The inflammatory cytokines are going to be drivers of inflammation and the drivers of disease. They are the underlying mechanisms of action of what is overstimulating the body's inflammatory responses. Okay. Additionally, recognize this list as the natural inhibitors. I'm going to try to open another. I'm not sure if this is going to work. It did not work in the previous ones, but I'm trying to get better. Okay, I don't know if this is going to open. All right, so I will. Okay, open a different presentation. Right, we're going to do this together. Open. All right, look at that. I just learned something new. There's this gorgeous orange and yellow sunset. I'm staying in a condo overlooking the water for 2 weeks while my new apartment is being ready, and there's just gorgeous sunset. Okay, sorry, my eyes keep going to this orange sky. All right, so when we talk about the fibers, the one thing we really wanted to make sure was you don't stress yourself in trying to learn each one, okay? Recognize all of these as fibers, and if you are eating a healthy fruit and vegetable produce diet, then you're getting all of these. Add in some oats. I try to recommend to avoid your fibers coming from the wheats and the grains as much as possible, because you can get enough of sufficient fiber coming in from produce. I think that every meal should have a 50% produce, and you should have a 3-to-1 ratio of vegetables. Very important. So we talked about the definition of dietary fiber, and you must understand this. It's a non-digestible carbohydrate that your body does not have built-in enzymes to break down for digestion, okay? Furthermore, I really wanted you to know that they added a new definition as long as it's still undigestible, right? And then the foods are intrinsic and intact, as well as have been extracted. And the biggest thing they show here is there must be physiological benefit, okay? What you need to recognize is that the glutens and the grain sources, especially if you're celiac, you simply just can't eat these as a fiber source. I don't know what that triticale is, okay? What we also want to pay attention to is the difference between soluble and insoluble fibers. The soluble fiber is going to be fermentable, and it's going to form this water-like substance in the colon. That's important, and it's going to increase the bacterial mass. However, if you look at insoluble fiber, that's not going to build the bacteria. Instead, it's going to form more stool. That's fiber residue. That's going to be stool mass. You need both for healthy bowels and for healthy gut. However, what we do need to know is the more fermentable fiber, what that does is it's going to feed the gut bacteria. We want to have healthy fibers coming into the distal bowel, and then that helps as a substrate, a food source for the commensal bacteria. The commensal bacteria, that would be a prebiotic, it acts as a food source for the bacteria. What those then do is they ferment, which means they use it as their own energy source, and their end products of fermentation are the volatile acids. That's going to be your short-chain fatty acid. The most important ones are going to be your butyrates, but propionate is also important. Those then are the energy source, the fuel that feed the colonocytes. The colonocytes use the short-chain fatty acids, propionate and butyrate, which are the end products of metabolism of the fiber from the commensals, so that you can have a healthy colon, and the colonocytes need those to use as an energy source to do their own metabolism. So another really important thing to pay attention to is this substrate. Remember, that means that it's going to be acted on. Anytime a dietary flavonoid, the flavonoids have these beautiful polyphenolic rings, and look at these healthy choices of what you can be eating. Those are substrates, meaning that that's a fuel source for the gut bacteria. I think it's a healthier way to take in fiber. We definitely want to make sure that we don't have putrefaction dysbiosis. That's undigested protein as well as a low fiber diet. Important thing to know is 75% of your stool should be water and 30% should be bacteria. If you have the lumpy stools, that's definitely constipated, and if you have mushy liquid, then that's inflammatory. We weren't going to pay attention to the R. This is so important in health. However, we are not diagnosing and working with treatment plans. We're just learning some of the foundational concepts. I definitely do want you to know that these are probiotics. Probiotics are they are eating the viable commensal bacteria. Lactobacillus and bifida are very common in your supplements. Saccharomyces is a healthy fungal that chases out opportunistic and then helps the lacto and the bifido grow. Bacillus spore is one of my favorite probiotics. And then kefir, yogurt, kombucha, and kimchi. Kimchi is a fermented cabbage. Kombucha is fermented mushroom. Kefir is basically like yogurt on steroids with probiotics in there. You don't need to know the brands. I'm just showing you two of my favorites, right? And then I really, really do want you to understand that the microbiome is a synergistic balance. We need healthy levels of them. We need them in the right places. We need the right species, and that the diversity controls our bowel health, whether we're constipation or diarrhea, whether we're IBD or IBS, or whether we're just healthy bowel. And then in addition, once you have a shift and once you have a change in that healthy microbiome away from homeostasis, away from synergy into dysbiosis, overgrowth, and imbalanced gut, then we start to have the onset of autoimmune. We have mood disorders, depression, anxiety. It's been well documented that the microbiome is hugely involved in a lot of the disease processes. Okay. The other important thing that we mentioned in class, and I'm not sure if it's documented here, but let's make sure we understand this, the supplementation of fiber instead of or in place of having it be part of our produce and our normal healthy dietary intake. If you're going to supplement with it, is these choices: Metamucil, Citrusel, Fiber Choice, and Benefiber, right? Those are the examples we looked at. Then we need to know that we're going to lose nutrient absorption and we're going to decrease micelle formation. That means we absorb fat less, and that means we're losing some of our nutrients. In a healthy individual, that's not what fiber is supposed to do. However, Okay, and that's why supplementing with fiber, I think, should be done at a time away from meals, away from vitamin and supplements, as well as with 2 to 3 times the water intake. You need to ingest 2 to 3 times more water than you do with the fiber that you drink it with. However, in an individual who is diabetic or metabolic syndrome, who has a lifestyle of metabolic imbalances from overeating and excessive nutrient intake, then the fiber introduced into their diets, because simple sugars are a rush of sugars into the body, using the fiber, which slows down digestion, slows down the meat cell formation, slows down the absorptive process, then what that does is that decreases the amount of nutrients being absorbed. It also decreases the amount of fats being absorbed, hence decreased meat cell formation. In an individual who's diabetic and they are hyperglycemic and hyperlipidemia, that shouldn't be the solution without fixing their diets. However, it is being used as a benefit to decreasing hyperglycemia and hyperlipidemia, but in my opinion, they definitely need to be changing their diet along with supplementing with the fiber. Okay, so that was that. And then the other thing I really wanted to demonstrate, and I hope that, it got dark outside, so sorry, it's got a little dark here. I want to show you one more thing that was really important. All right. If we are talking about calcium and phosphorus in the serum, this is board's question, but this is vitally important for a lot of health. If you have low calcium in the serum, it's very tightly controlled. That stimulates your parathyroid gland to secrete the molecule, the hormone, PTH, parathyroid hormone. So that then activates vitamin D into calcitriol, activated 125 vitamin D. Vitamin D then acts on bone resorption, which is bone breakdown. That releases both calcium and phosphorus into the blood. Okay? So when we need to stop that process, elevated calcium stimulates calcitonin in the thyroid. Elevated blood phosphorus stimulates osteoblastic fibroblast growth factor 23. Those are two mechanisms that the body has built in to stop, to halt, to inhibit bone resorption, which was originally stimulated because of low serum calcium. Okay, that is a completely different mechanism than when we look at the role of vitamin K in remineralization. In order for us to rebuild bone, vitamin D has a reaction with the osteoblasts, and that increases the rate at which vitamin K's carboxylation will uptake calcium, and it puts calcium into the hydroxyapatite. That hydroxyapatite is that beautiful matrix that makes bone nice and strong, but it's a combination of calcium and phosphorus. So vitamin K, by a completely different mechanism than parathyroid hormone and vitamin D in bone resorption, is bone remineralization. Okay, so the vitamin K is going to do this. This is really important right here. It does it by osteocalcin. Okay, it requires vitamin D. We need to activate the vitamin K dependent carboxylation reaction, which binds calcium and it incorporates it into the hydroxyapatite, which is that calcium phosphorus matrix. Okay, so that was a nice review, and good luck.